last year in Quebec.
Yeah.
Okay. It was the first time in 50 years that there was more new farms than farms that were stopping.
Yes. So I saw certain stats around that, and I have actually, and I don't have it pulled up here, but I do have stats around. There are more small, tiny farms essentially starting that are making less than like $25,000 a year. And then the number of farms over 100,000 are starting to peak up. Now, how much of that is just inflation that there were 80,000 before now, a few years later,
the model also.
I think the model is changing.
So it's trending, but it's not over. The game is not over.
It's trending.
We all see the big ag is still there. And
where I think it needs to get to is that we need to be able to do, I started doing, this is designed off of your ideas. How can I build farms that are next to one another that either share different resources or different versions of farms? Maybe we put this farm next to the other farm, and maybe we have kind of a look and feel that we have to educate them on what that looks like.
Sure. I like it.
Now, the challenging part for making something, modeled again off of, some of the farms.
Hey, that's us.
Yeah. Yeah.
Great. Good stuff.
So I'm using the path that you paved.
Yeah, that's 2004. That's a long time ago.
That was a very long time ago. Wow.
Yeah.
So I'm using the path that you paved to essentially make that possible.
Mm-hmm.
But when I speak to the CPTRQ and I even ask for a house, they're still telling me two things. One, no,
it's not big enough. No, because it's no.
No, because their answer is just no to everything.
Yeah.
And then two, it's not big
small.
enough. You cannot farm. You cannot sustain the farming. Two, you're doing things that are non-agricultural based on the farm.
And that's where you're showing it's like only 10%.
Well, so that I had to show those things.
Yeah.
But I mean, but in terms of like physical activity, we were doing a lot of tours. We were doing farm table dinners. We were doing a bunch of stuff that until the CPTRQ came out with a new rule, literally, they sent me a letter saying, you have to stop doing all of this stuff. And then a month later, they came out with new rules saying you could do 20 events a year. You could do tours on the farm, a bunch of other stuff. And I was like, thank you very much. You just changed the law. So you validated my process.
Yeah.
But I don't think that a startup farm can get to where we need to get to without having one of two things. A mentor like you and working at an existing farm that's doing that process.
Yeah.
That's great when you're out in the country or people who come from the country.
Yeah.
If you live in downtown Montreal, your access to that farm, your ability to afford rent in the city and then be a farmer is impossible.
Yeah, for sure. It's a project.
Okay. So online courses and all that other stuff change that, and then doing kind of 2-year residencies, working on a farm that's actually producing and actually able to be profitable is changing that game. Where our farm fits that is that people can come for the day.
Yeah.
They can get exposed to farming. I see us as a bridge farm.
That's great. We need that.
But they're attacking me for it. They're attacking me. They're saying, "Oh, you have people living in tiny houses and buses that are you're not allowed. You're doing non-farming activities."
Yeah. Well, you know what? I'll tell you something. I'm not worried about you because when I see how well you're prepared to fight them off, like they're in for a loss because this is great stuff, and that's exactly it. It's fighting back, and and when I started, and I don't want to bring this to. But it wasn't easy for us also. We needed to convince and fight off and fight back and really show and demonstrate. And then it was like, we took a big risk. We bought the farm without knowing if we could build a house on it.
Yes.
But would have changed my life completely.
Well, it changes the financials of the farm.
Yeah.
Because look, je le cacherai pas, I won't hide it. We have buses that are converted.
Sure.
On the farm that are using these different spaces a few years ago now.
Yeah.
We built, we installed solar panels. We installed big thing. We've got a beautiful washing station here now and a service point perspective. We're like doing more and more and more with the farm itself. And now we're building more and more infrastructure.
Yep.
Like we got power and water, like I said, a bunch of different things that we didn't have before. We only got power like 2 years ago on this side of the property, but we always had this little solar shed that was completely off grid to do all the stuff. But I can't do it without these people. And yet, I mean, I could.
It's a different setup because it's more communal the way you're setting it up. And that's great because it's creating community. It creates a vibe and it creates all of that, which is what attracts a lot of customers too.
Yes.
So that's great.
But at what point am I a farmer? I'm not a farmer. By me doing a podcast, talking to you as a farmer who is also a fellow farmer, I farm. Like I do this every day, every week.
Yeah.
Okay. at what point is somebody a farmer and somebody not a farmer? If I'm paying the bills for the farm, or today we went and picked up chickens, and I may have to pay the bill and pay the invoice, and I have to call the guy to bring the chicken feed, do the thing. Now, I did it from here. I wasn't out in the field. I wasn't shoveling.
Yeah. I would say, okay, let's propose this. The farmer is the one that's kind of runs the farm, because, farming is not just, putting your hands in the soil and planting a tomato plant. It's also doing accounting. It's also looking at the financials. It's about prepping for market, doing marketing. It's also that.
Yes.
So you'd have the farmer who helps and runs the farm, and then you'd have the grower who's in the field, dedicating his time to making sure that the harvests are bountiful, things are weeded, cultivated, things are done. So that could be the definition.
Well, I think that's a brilliant way of putting it, that there's maybe a difference between farmer and grower, or that there's maybe a balance to be played with doing both.
Oh yeah, for sure. Like how about you pop up FQT farm, just so that people see the scale of it. So it's probably the biggest permaculture farm in Quebec for sure.
And that's makes sense because it was funded, and I don't know how much you talk about this, but it had, let's just say, generous funding.
Yeah. Okay. By the Famille des Marais, if you go up, and we'll see the farm. You see, so that's a pretty unique farm. But that farm is not just people growing in the field. There's people doing admin, accounting.
It's a huge amount of work.
Yeah,
this is $1 million production farm yearly, easily.
Oh yeah,
you guys pump out more than $1 million worth of produce every year.
Yes.
You have to.
Yes.
To make something like this work.
500 chickens, 500 pigs, 80 cow calves.
But it's also like ideal conditions in terms of initial investment and funding.
Yeah, but it's never ideal, because what's the profit margin?
When you're a billionaire, you don't have to have profit margin. Somebody would argue that.
No, when I sit with them, they're like, "Hey, but
show me the profit margin."
Yeah, so the profit margin on a project like that is not the same as on my home farm.
Yes, your profit margin actually would be bigger on your home farm.
Oh yeah, for sure, like 5 times bigger.
Yeah.
So that's the idea of scale. It's like, this is a really interesting project, but it's a teaching ground and it's showcasing something different. But
it's also how to scale.
Yeah, so if you're setting up to do something like that, it's going to take long periods of time to recuperate.
Well, so my idea is that south lot that we were looking at, this back to this piece over here. This is a 4.5 acre. You're not seeing the full piece, but there's another piece over here. That this is basically my quote unquote farm, and I see it as a mother farm.
Yep.
So it's a place where we're taking the bouture, we're taking the cuttings off the plants, we're growing, we're testing, we're doing different things, we're trying.
Yep.
Okay, what about this garlic versus that garlic? Which one grows faster? Do I like it better? Does this one have like a different marketability than the other?
Yep.
It requires some level of like innovation, and I'm able to sustain that in part because I have an enormous amount of support that just shows up physically on the farm.
Great.
Okay, and I'm able to fund it because I had some amount of money when I started the project, and I transitioned from being an entrepreneur in marketing to now being a farmer.
Yeah.
Great.
Yep.
Not everyone has that opportunity. Not everyone can buy land where I think, but I hear you, and this is where I want to get to, is that I want to be able to create a way that somebody can buy their land, or at least somehow have a real ownership of it. And where I'm at now, and where I've actually tested this last year.
Yeah.
I'm curious your thoughts about this. As I created what is called garlic NFTs.
Okay.
So I created a way that people can invest in the farm by physically owning a row of garlic.
That's nice. Yeah, I've.
And then said, okay, well, wait a second. Like, rather than just buying my product, what if you're a restaurant?
Renting the bed space.
You're renting the bed space, but I'll even potentially do the labor for you. I'll coordinate the entire thing for you.
Yeah.
And then you have 3 options. One, you do what you want with the garlic. You eat it, you sell it at your restaurant or use it at your restaurant, whatever it is. Give it away.
Yeah.
2, we sell it for you. We bring it to market and we give you a percentage. So you helped us scale the farm. We help get more machinery, and we can help get the labor in, because otherwise in farming you make money one time a year on that one crop, at least like garlic. And then the third option is we replant it for you. So now we say, okay, your garlic can basically double.
Yeah.
Because if I grew 1 row of garlic now, well, technically that 1 row should at least turn into 2. What if I keep it growing? And what if I do that as a service to actually set up your farm? Yeah. What if somebody who had no experience farming but would come into the process and learn today?
Yeah.
We give them a 1.5 acre lot and we say, okay, you're going to go through training.
Yeah.
And we're going to slowly but surely build your farm.
Yeah.
And then we're going to start on our farm.